Friends, good afternoon. Delighted that you could spare some time out of your agendas to be with us today. We have four excellent candidates for you this afternoon who are going to, just for the record, we're not going to do this like formal debate rules and all that. We're just going to run it like a typical episode of the agenda. I'm going to make sure everybody gets equal time, do the best we can. We're going to have as little sort of crosstalk as possible. You know, one person speaks, three listen, that type of deal. And we're going to have a very civilized debate and see where we go. Please welcome the Minister of Economic Development and Growth and the Liberal candidate for Vaughan, Stephen Del Duca, the PC candidate for Ajax, Rod Phillips, the NDP candidate for University Rosedale, Jessica Bell, and the Green Party's candidate also for University Rosedale, there's Tim Grant. How about a nice hand for all of them coming on? I'm going to beg your indulgence. I know you all know a lot about these issues and are able to speak at great length about everything. I'm going to ask you to be as economical as possible with your answers so we can get as many questions in here and then there as possible as time permits. So let's start with safe streets. And we'll give the first answer to everybody in sequential order here. So we'll go in order of precedence from the last Parliament. So you'll get the first kick at the first question, first kick at the second question, etc. Toronto and other municipalities are moving forward with this so-called Vision Zero action plan, which aims to reduce traffic-related injuries and deaths. That's a Toronto thing. I'd like to know if you have plans to implement this if you are re-elected across the province.
This is a really important question, and whether you live here in the City of Toronto or in my home community of Vaughan, Woodbridge, or any of our respective communities, you want to make sure that when you leave your house in the morning, you and your loved ones will be able to get back home, whether you're walking, cycling, driving, taking transit. You want to make sure that you'll be able to do that again safely. So in my time, for example, as Ontario's Minister of Transportation over the last 4 years, there were a couple of pieces of landmark legislation that we passed in the legislature. And the reason I want to point those out is that both of those were passed unanimously in the legislature. Certainly the Making Ontario Roads Safer Act, Bill 31, which for the first time included tougher penalties for those that were alcohol-impaired driving, drug-impaired driving, for those that were dooring cyclists, for example, and a whole bunch of other measures that were included in Bill 31. And also the Safe Schools Act, the Safe School Zones Act, which for the first time ever empowered municipalities to use photo radar in school zones and in community safety zones. There's been some really great conversations within the legislature. I've had the opportunity to meet with other transport ministers from across the country where the notion of Vision Zero has come up. But the one thing we have to remember about Ontario is that even though we do absolutely have more work to do in this regard, over the last 16 consecutive years, our province is ranked first or second across North America for road safety.
Rod Phillips.
Again, thanks for hosting the debate. Fantastic. Thanks, everybody, for being here today. I think Stephen's right. This is an area where there is broad agreement. In my riding of Ajax, the issue is speed on the roads. This is a subset of the congestion issue as people find their ways through town, and I know this happens elsewhere. With the congestion that has been happening on the more major arteries, a lot of residents speak to me about the speed at which people drive, and so I think the kinds of enforcement measures that were included in the bill, I think things like the photo radar around school zones and construction zones, those are all very, very constructive suggestions. And I guess this will be a place where partnering with local municipalities will be key. Toronto is a place that sometimes does take a leadership role. There are programs similar to this across the GTA have been talked about. I think it's a good initiative.
Jessica Bell, your view on this.
So the NDP has a plan to continue enforcement to reduce the number of fatalities that happen because of distracted driving, because of aggressive driving and speeding, and because of driving under the influence, as the Liberal government has moved forward on, because that's a big reason, that's the key reason why people die on our highways. I'm also personally in support of Vision Zero because I am a transit rider and a cyclist, and when I leave my house in the morning, I want to get to work without being doored. I stopped cycling once I had children because it was too frightening to ride on Toronto's downtown roads. It just made me really nervous because you don't know what a driver is going to do, even if they have the best intentions. So the whole idea of Vision Zero is education, enforcement, and engineering. So when we talk about education, it's ensuring that both drivers and cyclists know the rules. And with engineering, it's about creating safe cycling infrastructure like bike lanes, which the NDP, we are supportive of all municipalities having a cycling infrastructure plan, and bike lanes is a part of that. So that's the engineering piece, which often makes good sense. And then there's the enforcement piece, where if someone engages in distracted driving and injures someone, they face stiffer penalties. And the NDP has a vulnerable road users law, which would introduce stiffer penalties for drivers that hurt or injure pedestrians and cyclists.
Tim.
Well, let me add to comments that a couple of the panelists have made. To talk about Vision Zero in city, where 80% of us live in cities, is that we have to get, municipalities have to get provincial permission in order to lower traffic speeds. And that's something that, that's something that all municipalities need help with from the province. Education is important, bike lanes are important. We've argued for the last several elections that 1% of the transport budget should be available for cycling infrastructure. That's 120 million. 1% for pedestrian infrastructure. And Europeans have told us, European research has showed us that when 1% of the population shifts from driving, let's say, to walking or cycling, we lower healthcare costs by 1%.
We have a lot of people who watch us in Northern Ontario who I think will be particularly interested in the next question, and that is about building infrastructure, particularly around, Rod, the Ring of Fire. Everybody wants to exploit the possibilities of the Ring of Fire, but I want to know what particular kinds of infrastructure you see the province contributing to building there to help make that happen.
Well, on the topic of the North, I think one of the key elements in our platform has been returning the Northlander to allow there to be transport in and out in a way.
I'm going to jump in there because that's going to come. We have a question about the Northlander to come.
Okay.
So we'll come back to that, specifically on the Ring of Fire. What have you got in mind?
So I think the province has a couple of roles. One is to, it is a complex set of stakeholders, the First Nations, as well as the people who want to extract the minerals, as well as the unions that want to work with them. The province needs to play a role facilitating that conversation so that in the appropriate way, the kind of transportation decisions that get made are made with everybody on side, because if they aren't, we're not going to get it done.
Can you imagine the province just unilaterally making a decision to build the highways in there to get that thing going?
I can't imagine it being the best way to do it, and I can't imagine it being viable, frankly, in the current environment that we're in. The second question comes to what investments need to be made there, and I think that conversation has to happen as part of those conversations. So there clearly is an awesome opportunity from an economic development point of view, from a community development in the North perspective, but all of those pieces have to come together. The province will have to play a role in terms of investment, but I think the nature of that investment has to take into account that stakeholder conversation.
Ring of Fire, Jessica Bell.
The NDP is in support of the Ring of Fire and would be putting investments in it to make it happen. I don't know the specifics about what road infrastructure or what transportation infrastructure we have specifically committed to, but I can get back to you on that. What I do know is that we are in support of community benefits agreements. So if we are doing government investment into this development, we're going to do it right and make sure that communities are consulted and benefit from it, and good local jobs are created from that development. The second piece of that is development that is significant as this needs to happen in partnership with First Nations communities. I've done a lot of work with First Nations communities such as Grassy Narrows and the Haida First Nation in BC, and for development to be done right, they have to have a key stake in involvement and development for it to go right, and for us to be the kind of fair and just province we need to be.
We noted before we went on the air here that most of the people in this room here either walked or cycled or took public transit to get here, which is wonderful. But there are lots of people outside of downtown Toronto who may be watching us right now who want to know, what about our public transit infrastructure? And what plans have you got for us outside of downtown Toronto? So that's where we're going to start here for our third question. And that is basically, what transit projects outside the GTA do you have up your sleeve?
The NDP is committing $180 billion over the next 10 years for infrastructure projects, and out of that money is money for transit. The number one thing we are doing to improve transit all across Ontario is to contribute funding to local municipal transit operations, such as Hamilton, Toronto, Brampton, Mississauga, York. And that is the most efficient way to benefit the most number of people so that they can use public transit. Because in the case of the TTC, I know we're talking about outside Toronto, but I'll use the example of TTC because that's my level of expertise. In the case of the TTC, if we had the $330 million the NDP will commit to the TTC, we can improve transit on every single transit route across Toronto, introduce more affordable fares, such as 2-hour fare transfers, which other regions have, and implement the TTC's ridership growth strategy, which would allow us to bring in express bus service, continue with experiments like the King Street pilot, and really make transit an attractive and affordable alternative. That shouldn't just happen in Toronto, it has to happen in every municipality across Ontario, and that is our plan.
Tim Grant.
So south of the border, half of the U.S. states have a partnership with their federal government, Federal Department of Transportation. They're called Joint Powers Authority. And what it does is it brings federal, provincial, in our case, and municipal partners together to say how in Northern Ontario, how in Southwestern Ontario, can we strengthen the public transport network, and that includes via rail, that includes GO Transit if it exists in those corners, but it also includes municipal transit authorities. We've been calling for 50% in budgeting in our costing in our platform, 50% subsidy of transit operating costs. But until we start having this regional coordination where we get the different players talking to each other, unfortunately, those investments are going to be wasted.
Does that suggest that those who make the decisions for the local transit authorities ought to be sidelined and that the province ought to be running the whole shebang?
No, we need a partnership. And it's not just about, so there's public transit, then there's intercity transit, and we need to start shifting. It's outside of major cities that people have the least transportation options. And so if we strengthen intercity travel and increase the public transportation options, we're also in turn going to be supporting urban transit.
I think when you were transportation minister, you probably made 50 announcements on all sorts of public transit issues.
Per week at one point. Yeah.
Just maybe. Again, take it outside the GTA.
Sure. Yeah.
What kinds of priorities do you have on what lines, where, et cetera?
So first thing I would say is there are now over 100 communities out of the 444 across the province that run, support, and invest in their own public transit systems, all the way from the largest here in Toronto down to some that just literally use one accessibility bus. And in each one of those cases, those municipalities receive 2 cents historically of the provincial gas tax to support their transit ambitions and their transit expansions. What we announced a number of months ago was that between that point and 2022, we would be doubling the provincial share of the gas tax. So not increasing the gas tax, but just adding an additional 2 cents for those more than 100 municipalities, providing them with significantly more resources that they could count on year over year and prepare to use. And we announced that a number of months ago, and that escalation has already begun. So that covers, like I said, 25% of municipalities across the province. In terms of other signature projects, I think it's important for me to highlight, our government was at the table first to support Ottawa's LRT project, both phase 1 and phase 2. We were a 1/3 investor in Waterloo Region's ION LRT, both of which are nearing completion, phase 1, that is, of Ottawa's LRT. We've also added some spurs or extensions onto Ottawa's project, and we're helping to fund large chunks of those. I would also point out a project that I was really proud to work on when I was transportation minister, which is the high-speed rail project from Toronto to Windsor, with stops at essentially the airport, Guelph, Waterloo Region, ultimately London and Windsor as well. That's a project that is advancing. And we continue to work with our freight rail partners, CN and CP, to look for ways to rationalize transit and transportation services. The last thing I'll mention, I think most people here would think of GO Transit as largely GTA, and I get that. There are 7 corridors within GO Transit, including lines that run up to Barrie, out to Kitchener-Waterloo, and thanks to our government, extensions of GO service now out to Durham, out to Bowmanville, and down to Niagara Falls. Our government understood critically that it was important to get more cars off the 401, off the QEW, and give people in those fast-growing parts of the Greater Golden Horseshoe more options. And that's why we are extending GO service to both Bowmanville and also to Niagara Falls.
Rod Phillips.
So I'll start with where we're agreeing, and that's on certainly on Hamilton. I guess I didn't hear the H in the GTHA, but on the LRT in Hamilton, on the BRT in London, certainly on the Ion project, on the Ottawa phase 1 and phase 2. I guess phase 1's almost done. And when it comes to the high-speed rail, and also on the RER, the all-day two-way
Regional Express Rail.
That's right, Regional Express Rail, including the smart trek aspects that are, I'm sorry, we're not talking about Toronto, but included in there, and the province's vital role around electrification there. In terms of the high-speed rail, our position is we'll look at the EA and see the work that's being done, and I know that the Liberal government has gone a bit further.
Next question, and I think you're first on this one.
Okay.
Okay, Tim, more public transit. The Yonge Street Relief Line, as the Mayor of Toronto likes to call it, is not expected to be finished until the year 2031. So I suspect people would like to know what you have up your sleeve to reduce congestion on that line in the interim.
Well, we think we need to speed up that line, but I think part of the funding of urban transit, it has to be a conversation about how we're going to pay for it. And so we've been advocating for the last couple of elections road pricing strategies, parking surcharges the last 2 elections, a $2 a day parking surcharge just in the GTA, according to Metrolinx, told us in this last election, would raise $2 billion a year for transit in the GTA. That's a significant amount of dollars that can help speed up, because we can't simply load, onto debt, the new infrastructure projects. We need to, and drivers, frankly, also have a vested interest in improving public transit that's going to take drivers off the road. So when the City of Toronto, asked for road tolls on the Gardiner and the Don Valley, and all 3 parties shut down that conversation by denying that permission, that was a real loss for Toronto, and it's a real loss for other cities who are struggling to find ways to pay for urban transit. So we think it's important to be talking about bringing in new sources of revenue that can help strengthen our public finances to enabling projects like this to be moved forward much faster than a 2031 deadline.
Jessica Bell.
I was the executive director of TTC Riders for quite a few years, and the last annual event we did was a Toronto and Trivia Transit Night. And one of the questions on that Trivia Transit Night was, how many years has Toronto been waiting for the relief line to be built?
What's the answer?
110.
1910.
110, yes. So transit riders across Toronto have been waiting years and years and years for the relief line to be built, even though there has been a very, very clear need for it. It's our position at the NDP that we will move forward and make the relief line a top priority. And in the meantime, we will continue to invest in the electrification of GO, so that is a cheap option. We will commit to making transit within the City of Toronto on GO $3 fare, because there's a reason why people don't use GO even if they live next to a GO stop, and it's because it's too expensive. So we need to make it an affordable option. And as I mentioned earlier, we will invest in TTC operations, $330 million a year, and that will allow for better service on all routes across the TTC, including bus routes and express bus routes. The majority of transit riders in Toronto today use buses, and buses are unreliable, late, and they're overcrowded. And so if we want to relieve transit on the Yonge line, we need to provide alternatives to people who need to do those long commutes. And it will come through buses and, on occasion, streetcar use. And we can do that by investing in the TTC.
Tim, let me do a follow-up with you,
Yes,
since
please.
you raised the issue of road pricing a few moments ago as a way of helping out on this issue. I attended Mike Schreiner, your leader's press conference Monday morning, at which he unveiled the platform and pointed out that as far as he was concerned, the time has come for road tolling on the 400 series highways going into Toronto, which would raise, in his view, a couple of $2 billion to help pay for some of the infrastructure improvements in public transit and so on that you want to make. The cautionary tale of all this is everybody's terrified of road pricing.
Right.
Every politician runs like hell away from it. They all did it at Queen's Park last year. Ann Golden had it in her report suggesting it. The Premier ran away from that as fast as she could. Is this just a political non-starter?
Well, you would think it was, given the response of the 3 parties in the legislature, but I actually spent 7 months in a downtown Toronto riding, going door to door with a petition about road tolls. And I had lots of drivers say, listen, I would pay that toll because I know I'd get home faster. But here's the key. the funds that are raised by road tolls not just have to go into transit, but it has to be in transit in those corridors. You know, Jess is right. If you're talking about relieving the Young Line, you have to provide other options parallel too. Well, it's the same thing with highways. And if drivers know that their tolls are paying for transit in the corridors where you're tolling, then that's going to lure the experience of cities and tolls elsewhere. You're going to lure 10, 20, even up to 30% of drivers who didn't really want to drive anyways, but they had no other choice to take the better way. And then those who pay the toll get a benefit because they get home faster, they get to work faster. And the tolls that Toronto was talking about would have raised $350 million, but it's like $3 coming into the city and $1 going out in rush hour and much less in off-peak hours.
So here's the problem with that, is that when you talk to people about a situation where the transit option magically appears, would you pay? That's not what really happens. And so in Ajax, people have to drive. I mean, there's no, many of my neighbors love to take the GO down to downtown, but when they're taking their kid to a hockey game or going shopping for groceries or going to some places in the GTA, they don't have that option. And so what I hear at the doors consistently is about how expensive life has gotten, how it's difficult to afford things. And this is not frivolous things for families. This is paying their hydro bills, this is for food, and this is for recreation and getting to do the things the family wants. We don't believe tolls make sense because people right now can't afford them. And people, when you talk to them about a road toll, do have that reaction. I've heard that reaction too, but then I'm not sure we're being honest if we were saying that they're suddenly going to have another choice. And where they have been successful, those other options have been opened up before. In my understanding, for
we would
instance, in
have to
London.
do that here. London had 3,000 buses available on day one when they introduced the congestion charge in London, England a few years ago.
So there was an alternative.
It was an alternative, exactly. You have to pay for it, you have to be ready for it.
So would you, sorry, go
I
ahead,
was
Steve.
just going to say, one of the things that I was fond of saying, or I have been fond of saying over the last 4 years, as someone who's lived in the GTHA his whole life, and everybody who's here today, people watching would know this, the gridlock challenge that we have doesn't respect postal codes or area codes. It's not a 416 unique problem or a 905 kind of unique problem. It's a regional problem that requires regional solutions. It's why our government, I think it's fantastic that virtually every other panelist here today is embracing the transit infrastructure agenda that we are actually currently building. So we're not committing to this stuff. We are actually building it under your feet right now here in the GTHA. Whether we're talking about Crosstown or we're talking about GO Regional Express Rail, we're not simply saying we support these things. Ontario Liberals are literally building these things. And the funding for those projects has been embedded in budgets, and I say this respectfully, it's been embedded in budgets that both the NDP and the Conservatives have consistently voted against in the legislature, which is a challenge now as we come up to Election Day on June 7th to hear all of the other parties saying these projects are great, except that for 4 years, they both respectively did their best to try and cut the funding needs out from GO Regional Express Rail, cheaper fares, infrastructure investments. Having said that, I would say now is not the right time for congestion pricing because you look at the entire region, the alternatives don't exist. There are challenges around the affordability piece, as Rod mentioned a second ago. We need to focus in this region, right across this entire region, on making sure we build the transit system that will support the people who live and work across the region in the way that they need.
Some follow-ups from that statement, namely, is everybody here committed to what's on the books currently, or is there anything anybody would cancel? And go ahead, Tim.
Well, I would cancel the loony plans that all three parties have supported for high-speed rail from Toronto to London, because in that corridor, yes, there's considerable GO Transit, potential from Guelph and from Kitchener, but to talk about a high-speed train, which is so phenomenally expensive a project in an area that has relatively low intercity transit already, to go for you don't go from 0 to 100 without end up cannibalizing all of your other options. And what Oxford County and others have been pleading with provincial politicians for is let's build up inter-town and intercity transit connections. Let's create the bus services that are going to get people to the trains. Let's work with Via Rail, etc. Look, I'm a Green. I love the idea of high-speed rail, but it's incredibly impractical if you have to cannibalize all your investments to create a system that only the rich are going to be able to use.
So let's be clear here. We're not, none of you, as far as you can tell, plan to revisit the situation we had in this province 20 years ago when subway tunnels were dug by one government and then refilled by the ensuing government.
No, we'll be digging more. So no, the plan is, and it's a fair point. I think a baseline has been set, and I was talking about this as well with a couple of people in the audience. It's a good situation we're in about this debate. As you know, Steve, I was the chair of Civic Action not that long ago, and took some pride in that group and a lot of the groups in the room who built the debate to the place where politicians could agree on a lot of the core fundamental things.
I do need to ask you one follow-up, though, which two actually follow-ups. Doug Ford did get a lot of attention the other day when he did mention.
He tends to get a lot of attention.
Let the record show the candidate said that, not the host.
I didn't say it was bad to get attention. I just said he gets attention.
Anyway, $5 billion for public transit, which was the announcement he made.
Subways.
For subways, right. $5 billion for subways. With a personal income tax cut to come, with corporate tax cuts to come, it's a reasonable question to ask how you fund this much more expenditure while at the same time depriving the Treasury of the money to expend. So what's the
You're
answer?
going to get me my opportunity to talk about liberal waste now. You realize which is fine. I'm just noting that it was the host who did that, not me. So yes, just to make sure that's clear, it was $5 billion for subway infrastructure, particularly to close the Shepherd Loop for the Young Extension and the downtown relief line.
And is that 3 stops on a Scarborough subway now too?
You know,
Or is that separate?
I mean, it's interesting because McCowan is kind of a stop on both. Now, I think the closing of the loop actually makes this a much more practical project. But I think the question of how do you pay for it comes down to how you run your government. And one of the other things we've been talking about is the need, we think, and what I'm hearing from people at the doors is they want to not hear about $1 billion on gas plants wasted. They don't want to hear about Presto going 50% over budget. So even though fare integration is a good idea, it isn't have to cost another $200 million more. Out near where I am in Pickering, and I know the folks at Metrolinx hate it when we refer to it this way, but the upside down pedestrian bridge is a bit of a legendary thing there. That
it's not true though. You know
well,
that, right?
the trusses were upside down. That's why it drives them crazy.
But it's
also
not true.
Well,
for what it's worth.
sorry, Stephen, it is.
Facts still matter in Ontario,
They
Rod,
do,
so
they
let's
do,
make
and
sure that we
they
get
do.
it right.
So you're
Yeah.
saying that the trusses weren't put in upside down, that the same company
No,
that
what
did
I'm-
it wasn't,
what I'm-
and
what
was
I'm-
fired and then
What
rehired,
I'm
and that
actually-
it's still
what
not
I'm-
done.
What I'm
And
actually saying is that unlike the NDP, you have yet, your leader, notwithstanding the attention
We're
that
not
he
talking about the
generates,
bridge, right? Okay. You're changing the
notwithstanding
topic, I just
that,
wanted to
he's
clarify.
yet to release a fully costed platform.
I thought it was the bridge you
So
were talking about.
he has yet
Was
to
the bridge
release a
upside
fully
down?
costed program. We modestly calculate $6 to $10 billion worth of cuts. So I will not, as much as I like Rod personally, I will not sit here and let him suggest he can fund $5 billion worth of public transit here in the GTHA until he has accounted, or his leader has accounted, for exactly what he will cut. And the reason I say this is because I've lived here my whole life, and we are still paying in the GTHA for the disastrous transit decisions that they made when Mike Harris was in power, as Steve Paikin mentioned a second ago, when they killed and filled the Eglinton subway, and then they followed it up by selling Highway 407 to a Spanish consortium for 100 years, paying tolls today in this region that are amongst the most expensive in the world. So my point was going to be, until I see a fully costed platform from Doug Ford, Rod Phillips, and the Ontario PCs, I would suggest to you as a lifelong commuter in this region, we can't afford to trust them on their word that they can build subways. They haven't in the past. They've killed them and they filled them, and we can't afford to go
Let's
backwards
get
in
a
this regard.
response. Rod
So,
Phillips?
This is from a government that built exactly no subway stops until a year ago, and congratulations, built one.
I'm not sure what you're talking about. We built all the way up to the Vaughan Metropolitan Center.
And
That's actually 6
that
stops.
took you 14 years.
That's
And I
6
know
stops.
you like
But
to
that's
blame
6
I know
stops.
they like to blame us
Right.
for everything that's happened in the last 15 years, and that's worked
It's
to
6
some
stops,
extent.
not one. It's important to mention
but-
that because
but the-
counting is important.
And
when
remember,
you're in
we're still
government.
not talking about the
Right.
accounting's important when you're
Yeah.
there we go.
So
Counting-
$6 billion worth of cuts
So six-
to build
$6
$5
billion
billion worth of imaginary subways from Doug Ford.
$6 billion was the amount that you could run the government on until 2 months ago, when now you thought that wasn't enough. And you had to put a $6 billion deficit in place, which, by the way, is now a $12 billion deficit, according to the Auditor General. But the question, the more substantive question, was around how do you pay for this? And I think that's a good one. One of the things around how cities have to account for things, is that they have to account things more currently. So when you think about the City of Toronto, when it gets a transfer from the federal or provincial government, it has to account for that more quickly. It means the province has to provide the money more quickly from an accounting point of view. It means the city has to provide the money more quickly. Think of it this way, and this has been an argument I've certainly heard from the city for some time, and it's a fair argument. The heavy infrastructure, things like subways, things like tracks, these things are difficult to finance on the property tax base. This has been an argument for the last 20 years. Our decision to upload that infrastructure means that instead of trying to finance it as a car loan, where I've got to pay it back in 3 years, it can be financed like a mortgage over 30 years. That means that for the first time in a long time, the province is getting back into the business of actually making sure that vital infrastructure gets built. That's how, Stephen, you can afford to do it. I'm happy to get out the credits and ballots and show you how that works. But what it means, can I let me finish? I let you finish. I let you finish. What it means.
Gentlemen, hang on. I'm going to intervene here so that we make sure you finish your point, then you comment on your point, and then we come over here.
Thank you, Steve.
What it also means is that the city and their contribution now can be spread out, so that's good for the City of Toronto. What that also means is $170 million of maintenance, because we're assuming that will allow the city to have more flexibility. That's $170 million a year. So these are all opportunities that I think are going to mean that the province can make that kind of contribution, get back into the business, and Stephen, that's how you pay for it.
So again, having lived here in this region my entire life, I've seen this movie before. We've all seen it before. We've seen the smoke and the mirrors. I think it's an interesting perspective. It doesn't take into account how you still have to book the money on the province's books. And to do that and to make everything else balance, you would still have to account for cuts elsewhere. That's number one. Number two, again, I want to stress, because this is really, really important to those of us who care passionately about public transit across the City of Toronto and across the entire region. You can't cut your way to more public transit. You can't cut your way to more prosperity. And every single time you are, because every single time I hear the Conservatives talk about how easy it is to find a few cents on the dollar, I'm a skeptical person by nature. I say, just show us exactly where you're going to find it. And they refuse to do it. And Rod refuses to do it here today on this show, which is unfortunate. And I know we've had a really good back and forth, and I know that Steve's going to ask the other two to jump in.
I am.
But before you do that, if I could just say, we also learned a little bit earlier today that when it comes to public transit infrastructure, there's a bit of a problem with Andrea Horvath and the NDP's math as well. Because in their plan, which omitted page 217 from this year's provincial budget, they would need to find an additional $1.8 billion in savings from public transit infrastructure in order to make the rest of their plan add up. So it's not just the blue team that seems to be failing a bit at math, it's also my friends in the NDP. Look, I served for 3.5 years as the transportation minister. We were not perfect, we were not flawless, but we have literally been building in every single corner of the Greater Toronto and Hamilton area and beyond. That work needs to continue. All of the numbers are factored into our budget. I just wish both the Ontario NDP and Ontario Conservatives would be as forthcoming with their plans as we've been with ours.
Coming over here now. A shot taken at your plan as well. So do you want to respond to that first?
Well, the NDP is a fully costed 97-page plan. We're always known as the progressive and bold party. We are looking at raising taxes to pay for what we are committing to do. And Kevin Page, the former parliamentary budget officer, said that our plan was reasonable. So if there's a last-minute attack at us because our numbers don't add up, then, I mean, we'd love to see the details, but it feels like a bit of a shot across the bow at the last minute when you've seen that the plan's been out for quite a while now.
It's because you're in second now and they're in third.
It's because page.
Well, I'll let you say that. I'm not going to say that.
In fairness, it's only because page 217 from our budget this year, which itemizes all of the things I referenced, including $1.8 billion to help support what the federal government's investing in transit across not only the GTA but across Ontario, is missing from your plan. Again, that's perfectly legitimate. Just like it's clear that the Tories want to cut $6+ billion out of public services and public transit, that's also a legitimate option.
Give Tim a shot.
You just have to be forthcoming about it.
Tim has waited very patiently. We've got to give him a shot.
Sure. Well, I mentioned already we would turn to, and we just released our platform this morning, $3.9 billion in fees that would support transit. So I already mentioned congestion charges like road tolls, parking levies. I mentioned that. I didn't mention land value taxation. We build public transit. The owners of properties around the stations profit enormously by the dramatic rise in value. John Tory talked about it a little bit with his Smart Track plan and kind of overinflated the numbers, but it's very valid that we should be capturing some of those monies, and in our platform, that $3.9 billion per year really helps to pay for transit. But we also have to ask a question, what kind of transit? And someone mentioned the one-stop subway, one-stop subway extension to Scarborough Town Centre. Really bad transit decisions that have been made. That's the latest of a whole series of bad ones that really do not strengthen except in marginal ways, when much better investments could have been made that would have served far more people at much less cost. So we think it's really, in fact, time to take 6 steps backwards, have a royal commission on governance to talk about how are we going to merge these bigger policy questions to bring the feds, bring the province, bring municipalities together to talk and come up with better ground rules for how to finance much transit that's actually going to be used and can pay for itself much sooner.
Just what I hear is, we obviously canvass different doors. What I hear is so different. It's people, I mean, what we are going to do in Scarborough, something that all the other parties have agreed is important, what needs to be done at Shepherd. I hear from people across the GTA, not just in Toronto, they just want us to get things done. These aren't perfect things. Yep. They want us to they want progress. They want, and they're quite realistic. I was saying to Stephen, I mean, this is my first time knocking on those doors, so you learn a lot. And but people are quite realistic, and they understand these things will take a long time. So that's why they want us to get started. What did the Chinese proverb? The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. Well, and second best time is now. So I mean, I think what you mean with the Royal Commission is not that we would stop everything while we sat and thought about it, but that's what a lot of people are saying is get on with it.
But as long as Tim has raised this point, let's spend a little bit of time here right now, which is, in the view of many, the Scarborough subway, whether it's one stop, which was what's currently on the books, or whether it's 3 stops, which is what your leader suggested the other day, is a great example, maybe the best example in the province today, of politics over evidence. The evidence, every study that's come forward, Josh Matlow's a Toronto City Councillor who has been really banging the drum on this one pretty hard, saying that there just simply is not evidence to warrant the kind of, what are we at now, $4 billion, nearly $4 billion of expenditure and a special surtax on property taxes in the City of Toronto to pay for something which is more about winning 6 seats in Scarborough than it is actually serving reasonably serving a transit user. You 3 are all on record, your parties, as supporting this expenditure. I think you need to take some time right now to explain to people why you believe in what appears to be the political reality of this as opposed to what the evidence would support. Go ahead, Jessica, you start off on that one.
Well, as the Executive Director of TTC Riders, our organisation does prefer the LRT option, given the evidence that we've seen so far. The NDP does have a position that the city has approved the Scarborough subway. We're a partner with municipalities, and we've been waiting long enough, so it'll go ahead.
It's only going to go ahead because the province has agreed to put hundreds of millions of dollars into it. Right. If the NDP forms the next government, will it revisit that decision?
At this point, it's on the table. That's what the city has wanted, and so that's what we are planning on doing. But I do want to take a step back and look at this idea of evidence-based decision-making and how we can bring more evidence-based decision-making to Ontario. And when I think about that question, I think about my experience with the Union Pearson Express. When I was with TTC Riders, we were very interested in what was happening with the Union Pearson Express and what it would look like. And we did a lot of work going to Metrolinx meetings to try and find out the information we needed to find out, to work out how much they were going to charge for us to get on the train, where the stops were going to be, and when it was going to be electrified. And we only found out at the last minute that it was going to cost $27.50 to ride, which was outrageously expensive. And so when I think about evidence-based decision-making, I think about how it's important that we need to reform Metrolinx so that information that their highly qualified staff are doing is made public, that requests, freedom of information requests that the public do and reporters do to get basic information, like what are your researchers saying, is made public. that their meetings, which are essentially a dog and pony show, are, they are, I mean, anyone who's been to one knows that the decisions are made usually in advance, that those meetings are run effectively and transparently. And that shining the light on that transit agency, I think will help us make more evidence-based decisions on transit moving forward.
Okay, let's get answers here. Go ahead, Stephen Del Duca first on this. Let's get back to
Yeah, sure, Scarborough. So I'll
Scarborough.
talk about Scarborough first. So the provincial contribution that's on the books of $1.48 billion, I think it's in 2008 or 2010 dollars, that's a commitment that we provided first as a government. That money, and I've said this consistently over the last 4 years, that money is still there from the province of Ontario to support the expansion of transit in Scarborough. We know that over the course of a number of months, there was an evolutionary process whereby City Council now on multiple occasions, not once, but on multiple occasions, has endorsed going forward with the Scarborough subway, and our provincial contribution of $1.48 billion, now matching a city contribution and a federal contribution, is there and it's in place. This was touched on a little bit earlier. I would say it doesn't matter whether you're standing in Scarborough or Etobicoke or Vaughan or Ajax, anywhere in the entire region. The people that I represent in my community, they want the talking to stop. They want the endless debates about process and governance and what color is on the side of a train or a bus and who's on the board and who the chair is. They want all of that to stop, and they just want to know that their public transit system is working for them. I know that people in this region have had to wait a bit of time and they've had to be patient, and that's unfortunate. But that's what happens when you do not have consistent, ongoing, sustained funding for public transit infrastructure and for transportation infrastructure. I think we're at a point now, and I'd like to believe we'd all agree on this front, I think we're at a point now where if any party comes forward or any candidate comes forward and suggests that somehow we can hit the pause button and we can wait another decade or another generation because it's okay to kick this one down the field, well, I hope that party or that individual politician faces the rebuke they deserve to face, because that's been our historic challenge in this region. But we are building right now. Make no mistake about this.
Okay,
Every single project that's on the books that we're talking about right now is either being advanced to be shovel-ready or is under construction right now because of our government.
Let me refine the question a little bit for you, which is, evidence versus politics on the one hand, and then Toronto City Council having on numerous occasions made the decision to build a one-stop Scarborough subway to the Scarborough Town Centre linking up with the Bloor line, and Doug Ford willy-nilly in one press conference says it's now going to be 3 stops.
Yeah,
Explain.
I'm not sure about willy-nilly, but
Well, how
listen,
much consultation went on before he made that announcement?
Well, listen, there is one politician I know of in Scarborough who remember, there's 700,000 people in Scarborough who've been waiting. Waiting through 9 council votes, I think it is. Waiting, and I think the Liberal position evolved at a by-election with a mutual friend of ours when she ran and was the subway candidate. That was back in 2013, 2014. That's a long time people have been waiting.
Are we talking Mitzi Hunter here?
We are talking about Mitzi
Okay.
Hunter.
So you and Mitzi Hunter were at Civic Action at the same time.
We weren't actually, but I
Not at
know
the same
Mitzi
time.
well. Yes,
Okay.
yeah.
So she was.
Yeah.
She,
And so you
but
got.
she was for LRTs when she was at Civic Action, and then she became a candidate and suddenly was for subways.
And you'll have to ask Mitzi about that.
Just like the Tory candidate.
Yeah.
It was.
Where you stand
In
depends on where you
supporting
sit.
a subway, right?
Yeah.
But
Let's be clear on that.
but the need for that and Doug Ford talks about this 2 tiers of transit. There is a need for 700,000 people. There is already development happening as a result of the discussion in Scarborough, and the development will follow. And I would tend to agree with you. We can be smarter. I think a Conservative government would be smarter about making sure we think about what the development opportunities are and not letting the benefit of that all accrue to developers. But nonetheless, there's been development, and there will be jobs in Scarborough as a result of that. From the Durham perspective, coming in from the east, the idea that McCowan and other stops can be the plug-in for Durham Transit means a lot to people in Pickering and Ajax and Whitby. So this has been talked about long enough. I mean, people want us to get on with it. They want us to get on with the downtown relief line. I didn't have it quite that many years ago, but I heard it was 1910 when it started. And yeah, it is good that that's a consensus among the folks here.
I think we've got some questions here, so let me go grab a handful. Okay, we'll take these. You got some more for me over here? Here we go. Okay, can you comment on the impact of ride-sharing services such as Uber and Lyft on urban congestion and transit use? Does ride-sharing actually help or hinder, and to what end? Jess, why don't you go first?
There has been a rapid growth in Uber in Toronto, and some evidence indicates that it is taking ridership away from the TTC. One thing that we think is, there's no doubt that it's contributing to congestion. And I do think that the provincial government, the NDP and the TTC can look at ways to reduce congestion and attract riders back to the TTC. An excellent case is the King Street pilot. The King Street pilot reduces traffic use between Jarvis and Bathurst, off the top of my head, during most hours. And as a result, there's been a rapid 20% increase in ridership along that route, and the streetcar is moving a lot more quickly. And those kind of innovations can allow people who are moving to Uber to come back to the TTC and get the quick and reliable transit experience they need and want.
Rod Phillips.
It won't surprise anybody, I don't think, from the PC party. We think that dynamic opportunities for transportation like are provided by ride sharing are good things. They do need to be considered in the context of the existing system, but it's up to customers to decide how they want to get from A to B, and having more options is good for them. We've even I think it was Innisville, saw interesting experiments where they took that on as a form of public transit. I think that's all good. And I think what will have to wrap around that is then there's obviously regulation and things that need to be put there to make sure safety is a component of that. But all of these things, this is going to be the future, is going to be these kind of changes happening rapidly, and I think embracing them in the appropriate way will get people where they want to get faster.
Tim Grant.
Well, I think we have seen an increase in congestion from ride sharing services. And part of that's the fact that we haven't been charging those companies enough. We charge taxi firms significant licensing fees, but we undercharge the others. But ride-sharing services could be a good partner with transit. So in Montreal, for example, there are taxis and ride services that bring people to the ends of the subway services, and the municipality actually shuts down bus services earlier to allow that and fully expecting that taxis and others who have an integrated fare service connection with those taxis and ride-sharing services can actually, so it's a partnership, and that's what we need, is not all of these sort of little separate icons running around, but working together to build a stronger transit system.
Stephen Del Duca.
Yeah, some of this was mentioned already. I know Innisville did, in an attempt to try and fill the gap that exists around what's known as the first mile, last mile challenge. So when you're getting off a GO train or getting out of a subway, how you can get from there to get home without necessarily driving your car alone and congesting regional and local roads. So Innisville did proceed with that, and I think they found some success. I also know that Metrolinx tried some creative stuff around Milton, the Milton GO station, with respect to ride sharing and ride hailing and on-demand transportation options there. I would say to you, again, I said this earlier today, there's no single magic bullet solution to how we're going to ultimately successfully grapple with gridlock and our transportation challenges, and I think we need to be creative, and I think we need to use every single tool in the toolkit, and if that means looking at the ride-sharing models that we have out there, other on-demand transportation options, working with our municipal partners, making sure that we do regulate for safety. I think we have to be open-minded to that.
Next question from the floor. This is different from, it's nothing we've talked about yet. It's a freight question. Our transportation system is also there to move goods.
Yeah.
Freight is the fastest growing component of transport emissions and is expected to emit more than passenger movement by 2030. What will your party do to help goods move more efficiently on our highways and city roads? How will you support industry in becoming more efficient? Okay, Rod Phillips, you first.
I'm going to admit to not knowing a great deal about freight on the rails, but I think all the things that we talked about on the roads in terms of congestion, remembering that, again, 50% of the problem is infrastructure, and we've talked about that, and 50% of it are what they call those anomalies, and 50% of those are about how we clear and deal with accidents. So I think obviously safety, I mean, for a long time, safety has been a big concern as relates to the big trucks on the highway. That is something that needs to continue to be addressed. But again, I think thinking of ways to use all the tools in our toolkit to get accidents off to the side, keep the traffic moving. Those are the ideas I have on freight.
Anybody here want to pass regulations forcing truckers to drive battery-powered trucks? Anything like that?
No.
Well, it's coming anyways.
Yeah.
It's in state,
Slowly but surely.
it's coming fast. Electrification of long-distance trucks is coming anyways, and it's cheaper. You know, the battery storage, et cetera, is much faster than it used to be.
But let the market, let the economics
But
drive it.
but provincial leadership can help because we do have rail networks. We do that can take the long distance freight off of the highways and create lots safer conditions on our 400 level highways. But we also have the second part of freight is urban freight, and that's where we can move much more quickly to electrified vehicles. Even cargo bikes in downtown areas that UPS is now talking about using. So we, as a province, we can encourage those developments. That's the
I
leadership
mean, what's
we
being
need.
done on the waterfront in Toronto is quite interesting in terms of moving freight underground, in terms of some of the Google Sidewalk labs and so on. I think there are some very innovative. Unfortunately, most communities can't be rebuilt from the bottom up that way, but there is some hope there, I think.
Jessica, you want in on this one?
Well, the NDP does support the electrification of our vehicle industry, which would include freight. So that looks like bringing in the proper regulations, introducing charging stations, and providing investment, which would help reduce emissions. And then there's also the piece around coordination. I'm sure some of you have taken the Via Rail up to Ottawa before and been still for long periods of time because you're waiting for the freight train to pass. So that kind of coordination between Via Rail, CP, and other freight industries would be something that we'd move forward on. So we can coordinate and things can get to where they want to go more quickly.
Stephen Del Duca.
So goods movement is a huge challenge, in particular in the western, not uniquely, but in particular in the western half of the Greater Golden Horseshoe as goods flow down to the American border. It exists in other parts of the province as well. I think, the first ingredient to making sure that you have a long-term goods movement strategy is making sure that your highways, literally the roads that those rigs are using, are actually in a state of good repair. It's one of the reasons that we've been investing unprecedented amounts of public money in our highway infrastructure, whether we're talking about extending Highway 427, for example, right up to the CP intermodal yard on the border at Highway 50 and Major Mac on the border between Bolton and Vaughan and York Region, 407 East out to the 11535, which is on track to be completed by 2020, the widening of Highway 400 and new interchanges right along Highway 400 all the way up through employment corridors, through Innisville, through Alliston, or at least in the direction of Alliston and all the way up to Barrie, and so much more of that work, and including in Northern Ontario, where over the last decade we've invested more in the Northern Highways Infrastructure Plan than any other government in Ontario history. So that's number one. Truck safety was mentioned a second ago, and I think those who mentioned it 100% right. I'm really proud of the fact that our province is the first province in Canada to introduce something called mandatory entry-level training for truck drivers. So prior to 2014, if you wanted to go and take your driver's test to become a truck driver, you didn't actually have to prove you had any training whatsoever. So under my leadership at MTO, we call it MELT, mandatory entry-level training. So now you actually have to demonstrate before you go for your test to become a truck driver, driving one of those big tractor trailers, moving those goods, that you've actually taken requisite number of hours under a curriculum that's provincially mandated. You need to prove that before you can even take the test, which I think over time will go a long way towards making sure that our goods movement industry becomes even more safe and more robust. And there's a bunch of other stuff that was mentioned. We have a green commercial vehicle program that's being funded by cap and trade money that helps support the adoption of new technologies that were mentioned earlier today. And of course, we are also using cap and trade money to invest in the build out of an electric vehicle charging station network right across the province, which will, in the long term, help support both passenger vehicles for smaller goods movement and also, I suspect, ultimately, some of the larger goods movement options that we'll have.
Do you know whether the PCs, if they win, plan to keep that process in place, the building of that network?
Which of
The last thing mentioned, the battery-powered, the battery recharging station network.
Stations.
Yeah.
I don't.
Okay, that's a fair answer.
Yeah.
I know all of you want to join me in thanking these four for coming from near and far to join us here at the University of Toronto's downtown campus at Innis College this afternoon. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Good job.
Really great.
The Agenda with Steve Paikin is brought to you by the Chartered Professional Accountants of Ontario. helping businesses stay on the right side of change with strategic thinking, insightful decisions, and business leadership. Are you on the right side of change? Ask an Ontario CPA.